What's up, guys? This is Pedro from My Stuttering Life, where you will hear the good, the bad, the very ugly. We're gonna laugh, we're gonna cry, but through it all, just know that you are not alone. So, let's get started. This is episode number 89, and my special guest is Rob Greenlee. Rob Greenlee is the VP of Content and Partnerships at Libsyn, current Board of Governors member and former chairperson of the Podcast Academy, and was inducted into the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame in 2017. Formerly served as Vice President of Podcaster Relations at Vox Next Spreaker. He started on radio in 1999 and then podcasting in 2004 with the first nationally syndicated radio show, Web Talk World Radio Show, to begin podcasting. I am honored to have him as a guest with me on the My Stuttering Life podcast. Welcome, Rob Greenlee.
Hey, it's great to be here, Pedro. I'm honored to join you on the show.
Thank you, sir. It is a huge honor. We have a lot of topics to cover, so let's get started.
Okay.
So, do you remember when you first began to stutter?
Well, I think it started back when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I have a hard time remembering exactly. I think it's something that kind of faded in slowly, where I started to, because it hasn't been my whole life. But prior to that, I don't recall having an issue. So it was something that shifted in me that caused me to have, smooth speaking capabilities. And over a period of time, it started to affect my self-esteem and how I thought about myself. And it was something that I dealt with for many years, and still do today. I mean, I'm not a perfect speaker. A lot of the podcasting that I did in the early days required a lot of post-production editing and things like that, because I was trying to, eliminate some of that stuff. But, I love what you're doing, because I think that there's a lot of people out there that would love to get into podcasting, but they probably feel hesitant because of, speech impediment problems. And I think that a lot of people have it. A lot more people have it than I think a lot of people realize.
See, and you bring up a good point, because when I had the idea to start this podcast, I was getting negative comments.
Right.
Rob, they were telling me no one, wants to hear a person who cannot talk, over the radio. They don't want to hear a person who's heavy breathing.
Yep.
But I just told them, I just said, watch me. And here is the awesome power of podcasting. Because I mean, this is a huge platform. And there were two guests that I had on my podcast, Rama Siva and Callum Schofield. And these were two amazing, courageous individuals. I had them on as a guest. And then later on, they created their own podcast, and they were inspired by mine. And so I thought, that is just a huge honor. It's a huge honor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does it run in your family? Are there any other people who stutter in your family?
No, not that I'm aware of. So I was definitely a unique case in that. So I don't know why it started to happen to me when it did. I know it was a big impact on my, like I said earlier, my self-esteem and how I thought about myself. And I was trying to figure out ways to cope with it and work through it. And I think over time, what I developed is it's really a mental battle, is what it is, that you're battling at every moment in your life, to breathe and to relax and to be comfortable. And a lot of it is about, at least my own personal experience, and I can only really speak for myself on this. It was a confidence issue. It was a nervousness issue, lots of things. And what I found is that I struggled the most, and I still struggle with this today, is being able to say specific things. It's always been easier for me to say things just naturally. But that wasn't the case when I was younger, when I was in my teens and things like that. I really shied away from being around other people a lot. I mean, I played competitive sports, so I was able to express myself in a physical way in my earlier life. Um, but like you, I mean, like what you just shared with me, there was a little bit of determination there, to get through that issue in my life. And I think a lot of it had to do with some maturity. I think a lot of it had to do with seeing levels of success in my life, on the sports side, on the physical side, as confidence building. And I think when I think back on it, I do wonder though if there was some chemical exposure that I had when I was a child that really kind of triggered that or something like that. I just don't know for sure. But it's been, and it continues to be something that I have to regularly think about. And when I do a podcast, and I do so much now, but when I started on the radio, and this was back in 1999, I had to surround myself with co-hosts. So I had like 4 or 5 co-hosts on the show with me that could really take the load of that show off of me. I mean, I was the main host of the radio show that I did, and I struggled on certain words when I would start to speak. I would hesitate, or I would say them twice, or I would not say the words correctly. And I would actually do this mental game in my head as I would be constantly trading out words to replace other words because I couldn't get them out, in either a smooth way, or I just couldn't get them out at all. And it would cause pauses, where I just would stop. And it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and it keeps people from, especially these days, from being able to be successful in their careers. And how important now getting on microphone. And I think you're so brave in doing this and working your way through it. And my hope, and what I want to encourage you, is to keep pushing forward and building that confidence, and exercising that speech engine that you have inside of you. Because I think, and this is what I went through a little bit, is that I think you get better at it, and it becomes a little smoother the more you push yourself, and the more you get confidence in it, and the more you feel comfortable on a microphone, and the more you feel comfortable getting up on stage and presenting to others. And that's what I had to push through, was having that almost like don't care attitude. It's almost like whatever happens, happens. You just get up on stage and you just talk, and don't worry about what people think. And don't worry about, because when I was younger, I was so worried about what people thought of me. And that was causing me to hesitate, and that was causing me to have not confidence in myself. And it was a difficult thing. And yeah, I could go on and on about this, but so why don't you take over now?
Okay, so Rob, let me tell you, you hit on so many awesome points. I wrote them down because I I mean, you just touched on everything that has happened in my life. But let's go back just a little bit. You were talking about, possible a chemical origin, possibly,
Mhm.
to your stutter. I don't know if you know my story, but when I was 5 years old, um, I was walking home from school, and our house was on a cul-de-sac, and
Mhm.
and as I was walking, I turned to the left, and there was a German shepherd dog, a big white dog. And so you're 5 years old, you turn and you look, and then the dog got up. He had no leash,
Mhm.
he got up, and then he was, chasing after me. Well, I'm 5 years old, I'm short, and so I just ran like the Dickens home, and this huge dog jumped on me, took a chunk out of my back knee, my back leg, and my head hit the concrete. And the only thing that I can remember is that I didn't have speech for a very long time. And when I did have speech, it was a severe stutter. But here's the head scratcher, Rob. My mom stuttered, but
Mhm.
at the age of 14, she told herself, "I'm done," and she stopped. I mean, so I don't know, you know, was I genetically predisposed to have it, or did the dog attack? I mean, who knows? But I mean,
Right.
stuttering is still a huge gray area, and thankfully, there's new research out there. So that's how I acquired mine. But let me go back. Had you ever had speech therapy in school? And if s- if you did, was it helpful?
When I think back on it, I don't really recall a lot of times that I went in for speech therapy. I think maybe my mom took me in once or twice or something like that. And I think the takeaway that we got from it was that it wasn't very helpful to actually addressing what the problem was or what I was going through with it. And I don't think we did it consistently. Yeah, as far as treatment goes for this, I don't have a lot of experience in that to know if it would be effective or not. I don't know. Did you go through some of it? I don't really have any experience with it that I recall.
Oh, Rob, I've had 20 years of therapy.
Have you? Okay. Wow.
Speech.
Okay.
I went all through school. I went in college, and then in the military when I was in the Air Force during the Persian Gulf War. So, oh yeah, a lot of experience. And the one thing that I realized as in speech therapy, they were trying to fix me. They weren't really, you know, t- tackling the mental health aspect of it.
Right.
And that's what I learned later on in speech therapy, where it is important to address the mental health aspect, and not just try to fix me because I felt that I was broken.
Yeah, you do, especially when you're a young child and you're comparing yourself to others. Um, and it wasn't my whole childhood that I had, the stuttering problem. It was towards the later years of my childhood, which is actually more impactful. I think when you're younger, people are a little more forgiving of it, but as you get older, people are less forgiving of it. At least that's what my experience was. So yeah, I didn't really have any exposure to really anyone else that had the problem either. That was the other thing that went on with it too. And plus I was I was a very successful athlete, so I was very much in the public eye. There was a lot of people that knew me and I didn't know them, and so I was playing on a very, very successful high school basketball team and then college basketball team. And so it was a lot of public exposure in that way. But most of the exposure was not in the media or it wasn't where I was speaking. It was more physical demonstrations of my abilities, which was something that I could kind of hide that part of me from exposing, which helped me build confidence in myself. But it didn't necessarily help build confidence in my ability to speak. But it did help, like you were talking about the mental health part. I think it is a mental health issue when it comes to managing it. I'm just not sure what the cause is of it. That's the big question, and I haven't seen any. Of course, I haven't been looking for research on this to have any kind of indication. But I think at one point, I think I read that there was some linkage with chemical exposure for children in the time frame that I grew up in, which was the '60s, which I think is when the exposure was. So I don't know. Has there been any research? Have you dug into that part of the stuttering story?
Well, the research that I'm following now is there were two universities that have reached out to me,
Mhm.
and these two colleges, they are in the process of creating an AI app
Oh,
to help people who stutter, and so that's what I've been focusing on
Mhm.
the high tech aspect. But I wanted to piggyback on um, on uh, your response when you were talking about in your experience, younger people were more accepting, and the older people were not. And I had the opposite effect.
Really?
I mean, people, I mean, just didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to hang out with a kid, who sputtered and spit and, couldn't do, much of anything, verbally. And then later in life, that's when I learned to, you know, um, find my light, which we will touch on later. But I mean, see, and as people who stutter, we all have that common denominator that, yes, I have a stutter, but our journeys are so different and so unique. And that's why people listening from around the world are just going to love to hear your story. So you were talking about your speech therapy experience in school. L- Let me ask you this. So, do you have any advice for parents and teachers with regards to children who stutter?
Well, I would say, certainly don't cause any more problems around self-esteem issues. I would say treat them with equal respect and try and be helpful and supportive of them. Some of these things, I'm not sure that a teacher really can do much. I think it's a it's a process that the individual has to work on for themselves. I'm just not sure a teacher is in a position to really do that much other than maybe minimize the trauma, um, and not contribute to it as much. Both my parents were teachers. My mom taught kindergarten, and my dad taught fifth and sixth grade. So I had educators in my background that I lived with, and I had learning disability. I was a hyperactive child when I was young too. So it was. I think the other thing is to realize that just because you have these challenges doesn't make you less intelligent. And I think that's the other corollary impression that people falsely get about people that have some of these struggles in their lives and have these abilities is that what I've seen myself just from friends that I've had over the years and my own experiences that just because you are LD or you are hyperactive or you have a speech challenge in your life, that you're not an intelligent person and that you can't be successful in life. You can be. And, and, and I think one of the things that I've wanted to do for many years is to get more involved in the stuttering community, to share my story about um, being able to be successful and trying to work through it. But I'm sure everybody's path is going to be a different experience. But at least I would like to be able to share some feeling of hope on that side because sometimes it can be a daunting thing to face in your life and to have hope that maybe there is a path out that can more outwardly be seen as successful in your life and still have some issues with this. I think for many years I tried to hide it. Um, I tried to edit it out. And that was another aspect of this, of the psychology of getting involved in podcasting, is that you did have the ability to do that, right? So you could get behind a microphone, make a bunch of stuttering mistakes, and then go in a post production and edit it out, right? And all of a sudden, when you're out public, guess what? You sound okay, right? So it's a little bit of a magic trick that you're playing on people, and you could probably do that too, but you're choosing not to because you're trying to be helpful to other people that are struggling with this in their lives as well. And be quite honest with you, coming on this show is something that I've wanted to do for many years, is come on a podcast or a show talking about this. and coming out and trying to help others.
How cool. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And there is still a lot of stigma out there, you
Mhm.
know, because, many people called me slow.
Yep.
I've been called stupid. People have told me that I have a form of mental retardation, that I
Yep.
should just stay home and collect a check every month. And
Right. That somehow you're disabled or something is the label. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
right. So, job wise, did you ever experience discrimination because of your stutter?
Sometimes those things are hard to tell if that's the case, especially earlier in my work career, because it's been a progression for me for many years of being able to become smoother in my speech. That's not, it hasn't always been, it probably as good as it is now. Um, as far as in my speech, I also have a lot of filler words that I say too. I say the ums and the ahs quite a bit more than many of my colleagues in the podcasting industry, and that's one of the things that editing is great. But I've also progressed to a point where a lot of the podcasting I do is live now, so there isn't really any editing. So that's a progression that I've been on for many years now, and I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, but I've like I said, I've tried to hide it over the years, and people. It's hard to say how much it impacted my career early on. Um, I don't know. I think it lessened as I got better at managing my mental thinking when it was, slow down, you know, have more pauses in what I'm doing. Don't try and push too hard through it. Is kind of the mental approach that I took to it for a while, and it would create awkward pauses. It would create awkward hesitations at the beginning of speaking, where I would just kind of like not say anything because I was struggling to get the A out or the E out or something like that. Um, but I just had to force myself to think, you know, how can I not stutter, but at the same time work through the mental puzzle of trying to find a word that I could say in replacement for that, right? So if I can't get out and or e or something like that, what other word can I use? So I was constantly playing this word shuffle in my mind about what words I could use to substitute that I could get out, if that makes sense. I don't know if you play that game
Oh,
at
sir,
all.
I those games are just physically exhausting
They are, yeah.
be because what many people don't know is that as I am talking to you, I can see the words in my head
Mhm.
coming down the pike, and if there are words that I am unable to say, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking of other words to replace
Right,
the
so you're
the
doing the same
the
thing.
and it's it's exhausting, Rob.
It
It's
is. It
exhausting.
it makes speaking, challenging at times, and at some point, I just kind of have to blow through it. I just occasionally will right now, there are certain words that I would like to say that I just because of the mental state, and I felt a lot of fluctuation from day to day, and I have no idea why this happens, but there's just some days or hours in the day when it just everything goes smooth. And then there's other days and it's just random where it just everything falls apart, right? You just can't get it together. And so I have no idea why that happens. The only thing I could trace it back to is my feeling of self-esteem at that moment, or if I had some negative thing happened to me prior or something like that, that caused a kind of a negative emotion. And that seemed to be like that trigger that would cause a relapse. And that's kind of how I think about it when I think about the mental process. And this is all a mental game that you're playing with yourself to get through this. And I've never talked about this before publicly, about this mental chess game that's going on in my head when it comes to podcasting. But I used to write scripts for a lot of the early podcasts I did on my nationally syndicated radio show that I did for 6 years, and I would script everything out. The problem with scripts for me was what I found over time is it's great to have a script, but the problem is I can't say it very well sometimes. I've gotten better at reading into a podcast, but there are certain words that I just can't start with. I just can't say those words to get started with. So I have to change my script kind of on the fly. So, and that causes problems too. So, that causes post-production issues if there's a hesitation there. So, I mean, this is complicated stuff, and it's a mental chess game going on in my head all the time.
24 hours a day.
It is.
It goes.
But specifically when I'm speaking on a microphone, it puts a lot of pressure. I mean, the early days, I was like live radio, and it's like I eventually had to take that out of the studio. I couldn't, in the early days when I first got started, I was doing live radio, and it's like I was doing so much post-production to get it to a point where I could make a downloadable MP3 file. And now to think that I've progressed to a point where I'm doing everything live with no editing is I think is hope, but maybe it's not hope that everyone has in front of them. And that's the part that I don't understand is it can every instance of this be worked through mental conditioning? I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to that.
Well, I mean, you bring up, just some fantastic points, and so I want to just piggyback on two of them. The first one is you were talking about filler words, and so one of my mentors is Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.
Yeah, I work with Dave at Libsyn. Yeah,
he is awesome, and so he was talking about this program. Descript.
Descript. Yeah,
Yes.
correct.
That can take out the ums and ahs, but because I have a specific niche, I mean, it is like so specific. Filler words are my bumper words. They
Right.
they are my BFFs. I mean,
Yeah.
I use them 24/7, and so next topic that you were talking about is hope, giving hope, and that this is a process. And what I tell a lot of people who stutter, that this is hard work. This is hard work, and that I have to practice every single day. I practice every single day, and many people will respond, well,
Mhm.
practice makes perfect. And so I say practice. There is no perfection.
Yeah.
I do not believe in perfection. What I believe is practice makes permanent, because if you keep at it every day, I do my daily breathing, my belly breathing, I do my daily affirmations,
Mhm.
you know, and that works for Pedro, because we are all different. And so I appreciate your thought that it does create hope, because I mean, never thought in a million years that I would be behind the mic. I never thought that, because people told me that I couldn't, that
Mhm.
it would not work out.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many years have you been doing your podcast?
This is my third year.
Third year. Okay.
It's awesome. So let's go back just a little bit. We were talking about employment, um, job interviews. How did you handle job interviews? Because for everybody, I mean, job interviews are stressful. But if you have a stutter, it's like a million times more difficult. How did you handle job interviews?
I would say the same way I handled podcasts. How can I say it? I think I just blew my way through them the best I could. I mean, I don't know that it's been a long time since I've really had much of a job interview, so it's hard for me to actually recall sometimes. especially those type of job interviews. I know when I went through the job interview process for working at Microsoft, I think I had to do like 7 or 8 interviews with various levels of managers in the company before they hired me to work on the Zune podcasting platform, and then I wound up working for the Xbox team. But yeah, it was really just kind of sitting down and just having very natural conversations with people, and that's what I really tried to. And I have to think back on why podcasting was so attractive to me, and how radio wasn't. I guess I have to be honest about it. Live radio was not something that I enjoyed. It was way too short form, way too structured, way too, precise, right? Having a speech impediment is not good in a precision scenarios. It needs a little breathing room, right? You need a little bit of space to be a stutterer and be involved in audio production. You need to be able to breathe and feel like you're not under pressure. Because I think pressure triggers a feeling of anxiety in my gut and in my chest that then makes me hesitate and makes me pause and makes me stutter on and not be able to start smoothly or end a sentence in a good way. It's just like now I'm playing word puzzle. I feel like I'm playing word shuffle right now, and I do it in every podcast that I do. But what I've been able to do is create this flow based on what I've learned from others, and I've listened to so many other talented speakers about how they speak and inflection and trying to drive emotion into how I talk and how I speak. And that's been an evolution for me, of being able to do that and do it off the cuff and to think and speak at the same time. It's a skill that you have to, it's almost like, I think what maybe I've done is I've kind of rewired my brain. I think over the years to work in a way that works for what I want and what I've been hearing others do for many years. Because I think when you're younger, you don't really have a lot of good examples around you. I think you're very isolated and you're not really around people, and that's the thing that I think has really helped me over the years. Is I've had terrific coaches and I've had terrific mentors in my life. Playing in sports was very inspirational to me and build my confidence because they had confidence in me. And the audience or the fans of my teams had confidence. My teammates had confidence in me, and it built confidence. And knowing that I could get through anything that was difficult, and I think that's key to getting through stuttering is having confidence in yourself and just doing the hard work you have to do to get through it.
You were talking about, to just hear you speak, I am just profusely writing down notes because you are just hashtag awesome, hashtag amazing. And so you were talking about rewiring your brain. May I make a book recommendation?
Okay.
Don't know if you've already read this, but it's Mel Robbins. She wrote a book called The 5-Second Rule. And I read this book a couple of years ago. It completely changed my life, Rob, because as you were talking about rewiring your brain, in her book, she talks about turning your your anxiety and fear, turning that into excitement.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That is what I practice. Because when I was asked to speak on stage, the old Pedro would have such physical reactions that I can't
Yeah.
say over the podcast. But
I get
after
it. Yeah.
But after I read her book, I visualized, I said, I am going to hop on that stage and I cannot wait. I am
Mhm,
just, I mean, I am so pumped up. I cannot wait.
mhm,
When they hand me that microphone, it's like it is on. I am super thrilled.
mhm,
I cannot wait. And that is just one of the little things that I did to rewire
mhm,
my brain. And so the book is called The Second Rule by Mel Robbins. So I highly recommend that book to everybody.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that there's another factor into it too and I think I learned this from the competitive, college and high school basketball experience that I have was that concept, just like what you said, it's the excitement, it's the enthusiasm, it's the rah, 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 and I'm gonna get up on stage and I'm gonna kill it, and or in my case, for many years, it was get out on the floor and take no prisoners and win the game. And I was very successful at accomplishing that in a physical world. So that mental conditioning, and that may, if I really think back on it, that may have been the key to me getting through this. Was that mental conditioning that I had to do as being a competitive athlete, was to be able to mentally condition my brain to be focused and ready to perform. And and there was this experience that I had as a competitive athlete that, if I could get myself into the zone, that's how I referred to it at the time, and as I thought about it, it was almost like this almost like a subconscious zone, because things happen so fast on the basketball court. You really don't have time to think. What you have The things happen so fast, you have to act instinctively based on your practicing, your training, your conditioning, your repeated repetition of skills based drills that you do as a competitive athlete. I mean, it's all about fundamentals, right? You have to be fundamentally sound in all aspects. So when you're out on the court and things are happening at 100 miles an hour, your decisions are instinctual. They're not thought about. And I think that is an important takeaway from this, as I think about it more, is this is part of that rewiring of the brain that I was talking about, is that you're starting to think about what you're doing differently. You're not thinking about it as reacting to the situation. You're thinking about it as getting into the zone, right? Getting into where you're focused on what you're doing, and you're just going to make it happen. And now that can put a lot of pressure on yourself too, but you have to get to a point, and I think this was the second tier for me, was having that focus and that energy to kill it, but also at the other end of that, just don't care, right? I mean,
See,
it,
and
it-
mhm,
I mean, it's not like I'm fearful, right?
right,
The not caring is the not fearful part, is what I'm trying to say.
right, and you hit it right on the nose because there's another mentor of mine, Les Brown.
Yes, Brian. Yeah.
He is phenomenal, and so he has a quote: "Don't let the opinions of others become your reality."
Hmm.
And you were talking about not having of having a I don't care attitude. I 100% had that in my head. Turning 40 was that pivotal point in my life when I woke up and said, enough is enough. I'm tired of being exhausted all day long. I'm tired of caring what other people think about me and my stutter. If you laugh at me while I'm having a block, that's on you. I love Pedro. Pedro is awesome. The stutter doesn't define who I am. It's just what I have. And so when I
Right.
had that attitude where I just don't care anymore because Pedro's awesome. If I stutter, oh well, guess what? I'm going to breathe and carry on.
Yeah.
And
It,
and
it
and
calms you down, is what it does.
yes, and
Yeah.
it opens up a whole new world. a whole
Right.
new world that I thought was never there for me. So I
Mhm.
thank you for bringing that up, because to me that has completely changed my entire life.
Mhm. And then, also when you get up on stage, like I've done many times over the years, is having confidence that I don't have to over prep, right? I think that there's also this pressure that we put on ourselves to feel like to make up for this challenge that we have to get all structured in our brain about what we're doing and what we're going to talk about. And I'm starting to get in. This has been happening over the last couple of years for me, where I don't do a bunch of prep. What I'm doing is talking about things that I inherently, and this gets back to getting into the zone, right? Of what I was talking about when I was playing competitive sports, is that I spent all this time practicing and doing drills and things like that. And then when I walk out on the court, I was focused, determined, excited, and just didn't didn't really think about it that much. I was more like, I'm it's almost like breathing, right? You don't think about breathing, you just do it, right? And if you can get your mental place to be in that area, it's like doing this interview right now. I'm very focused on my desire that I've had for probably a good 10 years now, is to share my story about this. I've been keeping my eye on podcasts like yourself, or organizations that were trying to focus on helping people around stuttering. And I think, I've had this desire to want to do that, because one of the things I do in the podcasting space, I help a lot of podcasters podcast. And you start thinking about, okay, I'm a guy that has a speech problem, and I'm looked to by thousands of people to help them podcast. And it's like it's really kind of an interesting paradigm when you think about it like that. And because I'm not that great of a speaker, but what I have been able to do is, like we talked about, just kind of reposition what I'm doing in my head and how I talk to people. And it's more about talking one to one. It's more talk about, helping you, giving. And that also builds my confidence, because I get feedback from others saying that they appreciate that and they appreciate the help and all this stuff. And it's a self-reaffirming cycle that it creates for yourself, that creates a very positive experience.
See, and I mean, I agree 100%. Many to just piggyback on what you were talking about with confidence. Many people who stutter, because I mean, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people who stutter, and
Mhm.
there's a fraction of those individuals who equate confidence with being fluent. And
Mhm.
with me,
Yeah.
my goal is to not, quote unquote, chase the fluency gods. My goal is, I want to be the best that I can be. And so, what confidence means to me is loving yourself. When I stutter, I still have confidence. I still have
Yeah.
confidence,
Right.
and
Else you
and
wouldn't be doing this podcast.
that's right, sir. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, you just brought up a very great point. So we're in this pandemic, but let's talk about two big issues that affect people who stutter. Let's talk about pre-pandemic and then in the pandemic. So, how
Mhm.
did you handle the telephone pre and current pandemic?
So when you say telephone, what do you are you thinking of it as something different?
Making phone calls, were you apprehensive of the telephone? Did you have others make your phone calls for
Mm,
you?
mm, um, I don't even, I've never thought about it like that. Telephone calls are very personal calls, right? So you don't really have the same level of fear that public speaking has. Or the same kind of hesitation. But it also, I think one of the dangers of phone calls, the more I think about it here, is that it's a much more relaxed situation, which maybe you don't take as seriously, right? So I tend to probably make more speech mistakes on phone calls than I do when I'm on a microphone like this, because I'm not bringing my A game, right? I'm not focused like I was talking about before quite as much. But I've also learned to be able to turn that focus on and off like a light switch. So it's not as hard as it used to be able to just, it's almost like I've conditioned myself now to every part of my life I'm on. I've, I've been able to transition that. It's not like, well, when I get up on stage at Podcast Movement or at some big conference to moderate a panel, that's when I turn it on, right? Which is comparable to what I did with basketball, right? When I walk on the basketball court, that's when I had to turn it on. What I had to do is transition my thought processes to turn it on every time I open my eyes when I get up out of bed. So that's the progression of this for me, is the more I think about it. So telephone calls were probably areas that I probably was doing the worst at early because I wasn't as focused. But over time, those got fixed because I was thinking about these issues from the minute that I woke up in the morning till the time I went to bed.
See, and that is, I mean, that is so interesting. During this pandemic, in this new normal,
Hmm.
where it's now Zoom meetings,
Oh, yeah.
Skype, Microsoft Teams, this has pushed us extremely out of our comfort zone because we were accustomed to human interaction face to face, but now that that has been taken away and we are now behind a webcam, we have a microphone. I mean, what are your thoughts on the this pushing people who stutter out of their comfort zones and how they can cope effectively?
Well, I think what it's done is it's made a lot more people live in the world that I've been trying to live in for the last 20 years. Um, so I was prepping for this for the last 20 years, unknowingly. That this transition, I've been pushing conferences and events to do more online for years, and they wouldn't do it because they thought, well, if we put it all online, nobody's going to come to the real world event. So, this pressure, and I've been an advocate for the internet and the development of the web for a long time, good or bad. As I look back now, that's a whole nother conversation about how things have gone so wrong in some ways with what my vision is. Because when I started doing all this stuff, I was doing a show about the growth and development of the internet and the web. That was the show the nationally syndicated radio show that I did for 6 years, was about the growth of the internet and about the growth of media and the growth of streaming and wireless and all this stuff and what was going to happen in the future. So the yeah, so the telephone question is an interesting one. And as I look to the future, the careers that people build for themselves are going to be so. It's going to be so important that you're good at this, getting on a microphone like what I'm doing right now, and being able to speak. Because I believe the future of technology is going to be driven by speech-driven platforms. You can already see it already with the smart speaker platforms, but we're just seeing the very beginning of that. The importance of speech and your ability to speak is only going to become more important. And that's the progression that I've seen for the last 20 years. It's progressively gotten more important. We may get to a point where visual experiences with computers become less important. And your ability to speak to the computer becomes your primary interface. So I don't know what that means in the long run. Don't get me wrong. I still think video is going to be a huge part of everybody's life as it relates to the digital side of things. But speech is a very important thing too. And hopefully there's technology that's coming that can maybe help in some of these things. I don't know if there's, I don't know the answer to that, but it's an interesting thing to think about, that maybe somehow technology can help here somehow. I'm not sure though.
Yes, because now we have to adapt. And so when I learned that I now had to make the switch from human face-to-face interaction into Teams and Zoom, what I did to prepare is that I would contact my buddies, and then we would practice on Zoom and practice on Skype. That way, when I had to do a presentation, I had the basics down. But, but after doing presentation after presentation after presentation, like you were talking about, practicing and practicing and practicing, I'm getting better. You still have those individuals who will make the comment, "Is your Wi-Fi frozen?" It's like,
Right,
no,
right.
I just have a block.
Good excuse. Good excuse.
It's my Wi-Fi. And so, yes. So we talked about the telephone. Now let's talk about restaurants, because restaurant is it's a hot topic with a lot of people who stutter. So how did you handle it pre-pandemic and in the pandemic?
I think it's the same. It's the same issue in my mind. Any kind of public interaction. I always, yeah. The more I think, I mean, some of these questions are making me really think about my experience that I haven't thought of before. But going to a restaurant and sitting there at the table, you read the menu and you think about what you want to order. For many years, and it continues to be, even if I think about it right now, a little bit of a stressor, right? To think when that waitress comes up, I have to present myself to her, right? Or him, what I want to order, right? And am I going to remember what the menu says? I'm always glancing back at the menu, right? To remember what I was going to order. And then sometimes, you have to say that in very noisy environments. And that this is another aspect that we haven't talked about yet, is being able to speak in noisy environments. And that has always been hard, very hard, even today. I tend to do much better in quiet environments. But because if I have a lot of input coming into my brain, a lot of noise input, I get less focused, and that's when things go sideways. So I don't
See,
know if that's been your experience.
um, I've had the exact I mean, just spot on. Um, better one-on-one groups. I have a hard time with groups, large clumps of people. I'm
Right.
better one-on-one. And so, thankfully, many of the restaurants that I fr- fr- frequent, they have pictures of the food, and so I just point. I'll take this. I'll take this.
Yeah, right. I'll take number 2. I'll take number 1, right?
Exactly. And now during this pandemic, restaurants are closed, and so now you got the drive-through, Rob,
Yeah.
the drive-through. What's
And
been
you gotta
your
speak to that speaker. Really, I think with the drive-throughs, what would have the most problem is understanding what they say, because the speakers that they have on those things are so bad. So, yeah.
it's just it's our world, Rob.
It
Okay,
is. Yeah.
so do you think that it's important to have a thick skin as a person who stutters?
Yeah. I think you do. That's that's part of that not caring, of what people think. At some point, you kinda have to get to that point. But in some ways, you can leverage that to some degree, and this is what I've done too, is that knowing that people do judge, and I've been judged many times over the years, I do use that as a little bit of a motivator. So, I think it's taking something negative and spinning it around into being a motivator to keep me focused, right?
Mhm.
Um, taking something bad and spinning it around and making it a positive motivation. It's a little bit of like the anxiety and fear of being able to repurpose that as something that keeps you focused. It's like, okay, I feel this little butterfly, but in my stomach, because I felt that before my basketball games too. I have this butterfly because I'm out there in front of 1,000 people in my shorts, running around and sweating and looking all vulnerable and stuff. And so that always gave you, and there's always pressure to win, right? So it was always this competitive thing too that was going on. And in some ways that's the mental attitude that you have to take in life. So yeah, so there was various stages that I went through in battling this, and then getting to a point, I think as you get older, I think you kind of let go. Okay, I'm just gonna let go of some of this stuff and just breathe and relax and just have confidence that I can work my way through it in any situation, whether it's speaking or in business or in just in life in general, relationships, just being able to have confidence that I can figure it out, right? I can get through it.
You were talking about going through your battles, going through your going through struggles, because for 35 years of my life, having a stutter and worrying about what everyone thought of me and being a people pleaser and everything, we have those dark days. And so, I went through a period of depression, and I had I escaped trying to take my own life, and in those years of depression, being in the darkness, thankfully I came out of it and am back in the light. Did you ever experience those dark days, and how did you handle it, cope with it?
I think the darkest days that I've had have been kind of the last 8 months, dealing with this isolation with this COVID thing. I don't know. I think when I was younger in my teens and stuff like that, I think peer pressure and wanting to be accepted into certain groups in school and otherwise, and it creates some challenges. There's no question. But I think I didn't have like an entirely normal experience with that. Just from the standpoint that I was a competitive athlete that everybody in the school knew about. So it put me into. I operated in two separate social groups. I operated in the socially accepted groups of the athletes, and then but I gravitated toward the rebels at the fringes back in those days. So because I think those folks were a little more accepting of flaws. So that kind of athlete group, I didn't have to talk to a lot. I just had to perform, right, physically, and I got acceptance over there. But I didn't have to socialize with them, right? So I gravitated towards communities that were more accepting of my speech impediment. So back in, I'm talking about grade school days and
Right.
um, junior high school timeframes.
Mhm. So let me set up this question for you, because okay, so when I turned 21, I was in the U.S. Air Force,
Hmm.
and that's where I learned how to drink. Because prior, I mean, my dad was strict. You come home, you do your homework, you help with the dishes, you cut the lawn, you wash. I mean, uh, uh, there there was no dating until you were 18. Did not have a driver's license until I was 18. My dad was strict, and I appreciate that. When I turned 21, I was in the military, and if they all know your buddies that you are 21, they take you out. And so we were in Turkey, in Izmir, Turkey. Um, s- um, s- so that's when I was introduced to alcohol, and so later on, what I have found out is um, two drinks. Okay, that is my sweet spot. Okay, 2 rum and cokes, I have quote unquote perfect speech. That's when I don't care anymore because Pedro's happy because he's had 2 rum and cokes. Um, what has been your experience with alcohol as it relates to stuttering?
Actually, I think earlier in my life, I think it helped with the stuttering because it helped me not care too much, right? Um,
Exactly.
but over the years, I actually I don't drink alcohol anymore at all. So I've completely stopped it in my life, and it's been slowly going away from my life experience for many years now. So yeah, I mean, if I look at my life today or even the last couple of years, it's not been any kind of an issue because I haven't been consuming any of it. I mean, and back when we could actually get in person with stuff, I would be in social environments that had a lot of drinking going on. But also when I was back in high school, I was the one that had the early driver's license, and there were a lot of situations where I was like the designated driver, get everybody home safe. So, my relationship with alcohol has never been a big significant thing in my life. And I mean, I've had those bouts of getting sick and stuff because I had too much, and having a hard time getting up in the morning, those kind of things. And as you get older, it's like, yeah, you just can't keep doing that. So
No, you can't.
yeah, so it's completely off the table. But I think in certain situations, social situations, having a little alcohol can kind of relax you a little bit and make you a little bit more fluid. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Many people have told me that, I should drink 24 hours a day,
You
but
should drink that.
that's not a viable option for me, Rob.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise that. No.
I got
No.
kids, so no,
Right,
okay.
right. You have to be responsible in your life too,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about s secondaries, okay? Because, I've been stuttering now for 45 years, okay? I'm 50 now, for 45 years. I have a lot of tools in my toolbox, let me tell you, Rob. I have
Mhm.
accents, I do ooh. Okay, so do you use them at all to help you, like, during a block, during a repetition? Because many people will, tap their head and tap their finger and or, like what I do, I close my eyes, which I shouldn't do. Do you have any of those behaviors, with regards to your stutter?
Yeah, the eye closing thing is definitely been something I've done over the years, quite a bit, and I guess it's a little bit of a sign of determination to try and force through it. Um, that's about the only thing I can think of, though, as a physical manifestation of the anguish of struggling with it. Yeah, that's about all I can think of. There's probably other things that maybe I'm just not aware of, but maybe my posture or how I hold my head or something like that that I'm not aware of because I have my eyes closed. So I don't know. I mean, what's your experience, or what have you seen in that?
Oh, I mean, I have a British accent, I have an Australian accent.
What?
Um,
Wow. Okay.
it's quite lovely. It's
Quite
so
lovely. Was that? I mean, it's interesting that you raise that point because I think you're going to ask also about singing, right?
yes, sir.
And that is kind of in the same vein somewhat, right? Is
Right.
there is speaking situations that somehow eliminate the stutter, and I think it's maybe a different pathway in the brain. So, I mean, I've never been a singer. I would horrible singing, but I can see how that would be different.
Right. See, and you were talking about, in your high school days, you had sports.
Right.
Okay, sports was your club, and you had people around you who were there to lift you up. Okay, they were there to guide you and support you. I had the drama club, so I was a thespian, and
Mhm.
they welcomed me in, which I thought no one wants me, but this group they want me, and they had open arms, and and these amazing group of drama kids, they told me that I could do anything. That if there was a hurdle, they were right there, and that's when they had asked, "Would I like to be in a play?" And
Ah, wow.
being in being in the moment of just, I mean, a nurturing environment, compassion, positivity, I said yes. And then walking home, what did I do? What have I done? I am going to bomb. I'm going to fail. The entire school laughs at me already. So I mean, what else are they going to do? And that's when they were like, just just learn your lines
Right.
and practice and just do it. And let me tell you, on the day of the play, Rob,
Yeah.
when I hopped on stage, I was the lion. So when I hopped on that stage, I was not Pedro.
Right.
I was a character.
Yeah.
And in that play, the lion did not stutter. He had his lines and a couple of notes here and there, but I
Mhm.
was that character. I wasn't Pedro, so there was zero stuttering.
Wow. That's
And
awesome.
but hold on, Rob, there's more.
There's more. Oh my
There's more.
goodness.
Okay, so after it was all over, when I stepped off of that stage, guess what happened? I was Pedro, and
Yeah.
guess what Pedro does?
Stutter.
He stutters.
Right.
And so I found acting to be one of my tools. I mean, I can be a whole other person, and
Hmm.
that person doesn't stutter, and therefore Pedro will not stutter. But I mean,
Yeah, but is that a confidence thing? Is that a confidence thing or is it
no,
an
a crutch.
identity thing?
It's a crutch. It's a
It's a
crutch.
crutch. Okay.
Yeah. But um, those drama kids, I mean, they were the only ones who told me that I mattered, and that's what I gravitated towards. And whenever I would have a block or a repetition, I would just use a different accent. And let me tell you, the faces on the people that I was talking to, because I'm from Texas, I have that Texas twang, and then here comes a British accent. Okay, so what's going on here? So yeah, it's just interesting, Rob. It's interesting.
It is. It is. I mean, we're talking about topics that are very deep into the psychology and the functioning of our brain and how we are forced to challenge that. I think a lot of people don't have to be challenged by these things, and I think it holds them back a little bit in understanding how their brain works, and links up with between your emotions and your ability to communicate. I think for a lot of people, it's just so natural that they don't even think about it. Right? It's almost like a subconscious thing where we've been forced to surface it at a conscious level, and hopefully push it into the subconscious in a way, and that hasn't always been smooth. And one thing I at some point hopefully we'll get to is talking about how other people think of being around people that stutter. I think it's an interesting thing to think about and to understand as a stutterer is really a lot of this gets back to how we perceive other people think about us as stutterers, and also how can somebody that's listening to a stutterer, how can they not be a problem in contributing to it?
Oh
I
yes,
think
Rob.
it's an interesting thing to think about.
It is extremely interesting. It's all about education, but we'll cover that later on.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay. So, okay, you were talking about briefly how you were going through, speech wise, you were going through different phases of your fluency. You would have bad days and good days. And And many people that I talk to from around the world, they tell me that this is not a day by day thing. This is a minute by
Minute by
minute,
minute day. Right. Yeah. Right.
right? Their speech. At one point it's great, and then at another point it's horrible. There's no rhyme or reason. What What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a complicated subject because it's so hard to always know if there's a correlation with energy level that you have, or when you're tired, or if you're well rested, what foods you just eaten. I mean, those are all factors that come into this. And that's what I was talking about earlier, about how we've been forced to just analyze every part of our life that contributes to this, because we feel these fluctuations happening in our lives, and we're trying to figure out why these are happening, why this is happening right now. It's like this ongoing question I have in my head of, well, why do I struggle on this letter? I mean, like the letter E, saying E or A sometimes just doesn't come out. I don't know why. It's almost like there's something in my head putting the brakes on that for some reason, and I have no idea why. So we're always kind of analyzing and how come sometimes I can say the word E fluently and other times I can't get it out? What's the cause of that? So you're always challenged to try and figure out, well, what did I do differently? Or how am I thinking at that time? How am I breathing at that time to be able to get that word there, that even that letter out, right? And then sometimes it's a letter that's linked to a word that I need to say, but I just can't get out that first letter, like E, in like saying like a person's name. E is in Eric. Sometimes it's just the letter E I just can't get out.
Right. And many people ask me what letters I have difficulty with, and so
Yeah.
I say, I respond all 26. So
Right. It depends on what day and what time of the week, right? Right. Yeah.
exactly, yes, sir. Okay, so here's a question that I like to ask my guests. So, can you sing?
Yeah, I can. I don't. Just put it that way. um, yeah, I just don't. So I I have done karaoke before. There was a whole lot of peer pressure.
Right. Oh, yes. And I mean, there have, oh gosh, I mean, there have been so many people in my life that have told me, "Don't talk to me. I want you to sing it to me." And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
Yeah, no." But for me, okay, now I know that I cannot carry a tune, but when I sing, I am at peace. I am, um, um, it gives me, I mean, it's just peaceful
Yeah. No, I can.
to me.
Well, it's more fluid, right? It's like music. Music is, and I think listening to music may be helpful to a stutterer too. I think
Oh, it's wonderful. It's
that
wonderful.
that fluency of thought is probably good. And I don't know, one thing I never tried, and I thought about it a lot, was the concept of meditation. If
Oh,
that could help re- rewire the brain.
well, um, last fall, that's when I started mindful meditation, and
Mhm.
it's wonderful, Rob. I mean, still, uh, I'm a novice, but I mean, it has improved lots of things with my speech. So
Mhm.
it's just interesting. Now, here is a hot topic. So we have a couple of hot topics, but here's a really, I mean, this will touch a nerve for people who stutter. So let me ask you, Rob, this hot topic. So, do you let others finish your sentences?
Mm. Yeah. I don't get upset at people for doing it.
See, and we're all different in our journeys. And when I ask people who stutter from around the world, it's just split right down the middle. There are half, who don't like it because it makes them feel, inadequate. It makes
Yeah.
them feel less than. And then you have the other 50% where, I mean, no, you help me, help me, help you, help me, help you, help me. And so that way, I don't pass out from having to block because when I block, I don't breathe and my eyes are closed, Rob. So that's not a good combination.
Yeah. Well, I think when someone helps you finish what you were trying to say, um, I think the reaction that I've had, I guess, is more, I don't want to bring more attention to it than was necessary, right? It was completed, it's move on, right? Because if I say something, it's going to come across as an attack or a negative
Right,
or something like that, right? On me and on the person that did it. And so it seems like a counterproductive thing to do to have any reaction at all other than just to progress.
do you think it's appropriate to have them ask you if it's okay?
I think these things happen impromptly, and this gets back to how people, the earlier thing that I mentioned about how people react to you when you have a stutter, right? Um, I think people do it instinctively because they want to help, right? Um, I I've had that feeling when I've been around stutterers myself, because I've been in their place before. But I also never do it though, because I know how it will make them feel. So I think that gets back to how people that are around stutterers need to treat stutterers. They need to just be patient and let let them finish, and not correct them or try and help them or try and do anything, because I don't think it's possible anyway. This is a mental struggle that the stutterer has, and I, as a listener to that, I there's nothing I can really do other than just be positive.
Okay, let me add to this. Do you remember when you first met another person who stuttered?
Oh boy, yeah, yeah.
You were how old?
Um, well, yeah. I don't know that I can remember when that was or in what situation that was, but I can also say that that is another mental discipline that I've had to develop as well, because being around another person that stutters is a trigger, can be a trigger for me,
Mhm.
and it requires me to be able to focus. And it's not any different, really, at the end of the day, than trying to speak in noisy environments, because what it creates is a trigger of emotions, and struggle, that brings back memories, and it 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 puts in your mental consciousness that this is something that could happen, right? And it spikes one's feelings of wanting to help and wanting to, not have that experience happen to the person that's struggling through it, um, but also being respectful of just not treating this person any different, because it's really not, at the end of the day, it's really not that big a deal. um, I don't think it is anyway. And what you want to do is you want to instill confidence and positivity, because that's what the stutterer needs. So I'm more focused on what the stutterer needs, not what I need.
See, and that's very interesting you bring up triggered because I didn't meet another person who stuttered until my 20s. And in my experience, I all of that person's emotions,
Hmm.
be it positive and negative and traumatic, I absorbed all of those.
Hmm.
and the energy was just powerful. It was a powerful energy, and I found myself having that person's s- um, secondary behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And and I mean, you bring up a awesome point where it's a mental challenge. I'm here talking to another person who stutters, and I mean, all that I want to do is just help, 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 help.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found is I'm all all of their emotions and energies I just quickly absorbed, and that is it
Yeah.
drains you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's when you have to make the conscious effort. Okay, I need to recharge.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you just brought up an amazing point. So thank you for doing that.
Well, yeah. I think that, you're doing an amazing job with this podcast. And I think just during the progression of this conversation we've had, I think you're doing better. And I think, I don't know if it's a comfort between us as we talk together, but that's what I want to foster. Is I want you to feel comfortable in talking to me, and that somehow you're not feeling anxiety because you're talking to me. So, and it's easy for that to happen. I think I face that a lot with a lot of the conversations that I've had with executives and large, powerful people on my radio shows and podcasts and stuff, is just being nervous, um, talking to people that are powerful and influential, that are smooth as silk, right? These are some of the shows I've been on are professional radio personalities they built, big careers as speakers, and they're smoothest. They don't make mistakes. None of these, they don't make mistakes. So that's a lot of pressure to put yourself under. Is a comparative thing, especially on a podcast or a radio show that's heard by millions of people. Right?
Mhm. Yes,
You're
sir.
competing with them in the ears of lots of people. So that's a lot of pressure.
Yes, sir. In the video that I can watch you, all that I'm getting from you is nothing but positive energy.
Hmm.
When I look at you, I feel positivity. I feel nurturing.
Hmm.
I feel compassion,
Hmm.
and and many people tell me, um, "Don't be nervous, slow down." But I mean, I stutter either way, so it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. But in talking to you, I see nothing but positivity, and so
Hmm.
I mean, that's what I pick up. So I just
Well,
you know,
thank you. I appreciate that. And that's what I foster in the podcast community too, because I think I'm not alone on that. I think there are many people out there that don't really have a speech or a stuttering issue in their lives, but are scared to talk, just because of self-esteem things or experience, or being suppressed somehow in their lives about what they have to communicate. And I think doing a podcast is a little bit of a stick it to you kind of thing too. It's like, I'm going to do it in spite of what you're saying I'm capable of doing. Because in junior high and high school, I was told that I wasn't a college. I wasn't capable of going to college. Is what various people told me as counselors. I don't think I've ever talked about that before, but they people just judge based on the wrong things. And I think I got my last year in private college and university, I got a 4.0. So it's so you can't underestimate people and what they're capable of doing just based on things like whether or not they stutter or not. And that's the hopefulness that I want to bring, is that everybody's capable of doing a lot more than sometimes they think they are.
Right. You are 1000% correct, because my school counselors told me that I would be perfect for data entry.
Right. You don't have to
Thank
talk to
you.
anyone, right? Yeah. Right.
No human interaction, just type.
Right. There you go. That's
All right.
that's inspiring, isn't it? Right.
It's fantastic.
Right.
So how do you handle bad days? Like, speech-wise, we have our good days and then we have
Mhm.
our bad days, but how do you handle the bad days? The really bad days?
Um, just hope that they're over soon. Um, yeah, bad days can take the form of a lot of things. And it's not so much necessarily always about the speech stuff, but bad days can trigger bad speech days. So if other things are going on in your life that are, maybe you get bad news, or you get laid off from a job, or you get, you crash your car, or you get divorced, or that final divorce paper signed or something like that. I mean, or whatever the traumatic thing that happens in your life, those are definitely low points. um, or if you've gotten in an argument with somebody, or something has gone haywire in your life. You just have to sit back and realize that that's the life journey that we all lead, whether or not I have a speech impediment or not. It's not like the speech issue that I had probably contributed to any of that. So, but it does affect my self confidence, my ability to speak smoothly, because I'm calm. Sometimes those things can be very stressful, and those are life experiences that all of us have. Some of us have impacts like speech impacts that a lot of people don't have. So we are challenged with more in our lives with having speech problems than a lot of people have. And I think a lot of people don't really think about that.
See, that's why we have this amazing platform. It's all about education, because
Mhm.
many people don't understand from the time that that I would wake up until the time that I went to bed, my whole body was tense. Every
Yep.
organ is tense in my body, from blocking, repeating, from hyperventilating. You know,
Yeah, that's true too. Right.
that happened
Yeah.
during job interviews that I've had, Rob. But we'll talk about that later. So, but they don't.
Brown paper bags are handy. Is that what you're saying?
There might be, and so, so they just don't understand that stuttering is physically, not to mention mentally, but physically draining on our bodies. Bad days, I mean, I would just come home, turn off all of the lights, and just sit on the couch. And I mean, and tell myself, tomorrow is another day.
And don't say a word, right? Yeah.
I
You're
I
just
don't want to talk
completely
to
silent. Yeah.
nobody, Rob. Don't call me. I'm not going to answer. So,
Right. The phone rings, let it ring.
yes. Okay. So, have you ever experienced this? Because I mean, mine, I gave it a name, but have you ever experienced negative self talk?
Oh, yeah, every day, all day long. Yeah. That's the biggest thing that all of us have to overcome, is the skepticism in our own heads about our abilities and our thoughts and where we are in life, and what we're doing in life. You know, that is that self-talk. That comes from our childhood. It comes from our actual life experience, and it comes from our questioning of our choices, at all times in our lives. And I think it was significantly contributed to why there was a lot of fluctuation in my stuttering, was that self-talk. So controlling that self-talk, about my ability to contribute, to speak, um, and I think was really important and key to getting over it more. I'm never going to be 100% over it. It's like I'm never going to be 100% over having hyperactive, learning disabilities or anything like that. But what you've done is the only thing you can do is kind of recondition your mind about how you think about things, and try and find shortcuts and try and find ways that you can get around these miswirings that are in your brain. Because I believe that's what they are. They're synapses that are not functioning properly, that has caused this to happen. So somehow I have to reroute around it.
See, and you are so correct. During my later years of therapy, what I learned is to give it a name. And so I call mine Oscar the Grouch.
Right.
And, and I mean, Oscar would pop up on the daily, Rob, on the daily with everything, on making that phone call, on talking to that person, on making a choice of whether or not to make the phone call. I mean,
Right.
he would pop up every day. And so once I gave it a name,
Right.
when when he would pop up, I would say, Oscar, be quiet, or or some other colorful language. And so once I took once I named it, I took back control. And one and so when he pops up, I put him in his place and then I just keep on going. But I mean he pops up constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why. Why does he keep popping up? I don't know where that comes from. Why we have to have those self-talk things? Is that our subconscious trying to keep us on track or something? I've never understood where that self-talk comes from. Never
You
understood.
know, it's interesting. It's interesting. Now, we were talking about, how you handle bad days, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you have a win, like let's say you were giving a presentation and it was phenomenal, I give that a W. Do do you celebrate your wins?
Hmm. Um, I don't know that I do anymore. I don't know that I think it's more, I think in the earlier days when I was struggling with this, I think I did. I think I was prouder about myself. Um, that self-talk was vanquished for the day. Um, but I think over time, as I've made it more from the time I open my eyes till the time I close my eyes, at the beginning and the end of the day, I don't think that it's as necessary. So it's just normal function now. So, and that win can manifest itself in many things, throughout the day. It can be affirmations from others, no negative reactions from people. It can manifest itself in being able to do 2 or 3, 1 hour interviews fairly smoothly in one day. Because that's one thing I've done is I have just jumped in with both feet. I mean, my whole life is about podcasting now. I from the time I wake up in the morning till the time I go to bed, it's all about podcasting, and right now I'm spending probably 8 hours a week on um, on the microphone. So you think about how much, but probably prior to COVID, I probably spent more time though, because I was at conferences, I was traveling, I was talking to people at ticket counters and hotels, and after hours at podcast conferences, more person one-to-one type of talking too. So maybe in some ways the COVID thing has cut me back on how much I talk. Um, it's just more converted it more over to spending more time on the microphone.
See, and you bring up a great point. There is a book by John Maxwell. It's the Laws of Leadership. And during my years of personal development, of reading all those awesome books from Les Brown and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Mel Robbins, by stepping out of my comfort zone just a little bit every day.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's say on Monday I do it and I fail. Well, that's okay because I'm going to learn from my failure and then apply it to the next time. Then let's say on Tuesday I step out of my comfort zone, but I have a win. I said,
Mhm.
"That's awesome." And then on
Mhm.
Wednesday, I have a win, and Thursday and Friday, I have, you know, wins. And John Maxwell talks about the laws of momentum. So
Mhm.
every time that I get a win, I gain a little bit more momentum for the next time, and then the next time. And so, when I have a win, I mean, I do my little happy dance, and then I move on because I know where I've been, and now I am just having the time of my life right now. I life is wonderful. Life is wonderful. So yes,
Yeah, I would think that just the fact that you're confronting your challenge and you're pushing through it and you're trying to do something that others are going to think you're courageous for, I think is only going to build positive feelings inside of you. And I think that's what's really, you're helping others. You're sharing life experiences that hopefully others can learn from. Um, I do know that everybody kind of suffers in their own silence. And what we say here may not help as many people as maybe we think it might, just because not everybody hears it. And then not everybody kind of can associate with what our experience has been because maybe that's not been their experience. But all we can do is really help share and normalize some of this stuff. And I don't know that the pathway that I took through this is something that will be successful for anyone else. I don't know. That's that's what I'm hopeful, but I can't really get in someone's head and make that change for them. That's something that they have to think about and work through themselves. And I don't have a magic formula here.
that's I mean that's powerful because I mean there there is no magical formula. There's no magic pill because
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many emails I get. If I take this one pill, Pedro, if you take this pill for your stutter, it will help cure your stutter. And those, I just delete because, I tried everything, Rob. I tried voodoo. I tried voodoo because I thought that would work, but it did not, Rob. Voodoo does not work. And so it's,
Yeah.
it's just interesting. So here is another hot topic, Rob. Okay, so it's a head scratcher. So, I ask everybody, and the answers are split right down the middle. So, when you are alone, can you speak without stuttering?
When I'm alone talking to myself
You are.
or when I just speak,
You
well,
are just all by yourself.
well, that's what podcasting challenges you to do, right? Especially if you're pre-recording, which is what I did for many, many years. And I would say that I struggled a lot. The putting the game face on thing, like we talked about earlier, applies to this discussion. And one of the reasons why I went live is because that's like, I'm coming to the game, right? When I'm in individual one-on-one conversations, there is a propensity to let your guard down a little bit, and then you take it to another level, which is being alone and trying to talk. Yeah, it's an interesting question because I don't know that I ever talk to myself alone, other than on a podcast. I'm always talking to someone else, so I don't know.
Well, I talk to myself, Rob. So
Well, no, I mean
it's all
that's what we
good.
were talking about before, the whole self-talk thing, right?
Exactly. Yes,
Right.
exactly. And so, many people have told me that when they are alone, they still stutter. And then
They
half
stutter in their mind without it actually coming out of their mouth? Is that what you're
they
saying?
they are just talking to
Selves, and they're affirming a stutter? Is that
they're
what they're doing?
and they're still stuttering. Yeah.
Huh, I don't do that.
And there was a guest who was telling me that he stutters in his dreams.
Wow, okay.
I know it's like your head explodes. I mean, I mean, it's just,
Well, that's like a nightmare, right?
oh God, yes. I mean, we're all different. We're all
Yeah.
different.
Well, that's your subconscious
Hmm.
processing those traumas. That's what they are.
Hmm. Uh, do you find that your stutter gets worse when you're tired or stressed, or
Yes.
okay?
All the above,
All the
right.
above. Okay. See, and um, for me, when I'm tired, I don't have anything left in me. So there are no blocks. There are no repeating words. I mean, w- we're all different in our journeys. It's just interesting.
So you're saying that when you're tired, you don't stutter?
I don't know because I don't have anything left. I don't have anything left. And
Hmm. There may be something to that. That maybe the more I think about it, I think stuttering can be triggered by anxiety and wanting to fight. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but almost like I'm not going to let it win. It's a it For many years it inspired a competitive reaction in me,
mhm,
and that reaction was to almost force myself, and I think to say a particular word, and that's what caused me to do this word scramble in my brain. Instead of trying to force something, I'm going to find something that just comes out smooth. Because I have the time, because I'm not able to get out the words, so I'm already pausing. So I'm thinking, oh, what can I say as a replacement word for that
exactly.
that I can get out right away? And that's where the pausing came from. Right? Was
Right,
okay. I can feel that not coming, so let me do a little word replace.
right.
And I think for many years I was forcing it. I was
Mhm,
forcing it. It's like, damn it, I'm going to say that word no matter what. And I, I had that problem on the podcast too when I was doing scripted radio shows. When I had a script that I was reading for my radio show when I was pre-producing, I was supposed to say the exact words on the page, and at times it wouldn't come out. So I would have to change the script real time in the show. And sometimes it wasn't the right word. So it didn't come across quite right. But yeah, yeah,
that's
I can see that. Anger, frustration, um, those are all anxiety triggers that are all linked with that frustration.
See, I mean, you bring up two great points. The first point that you were talking about is reading from the script. And listening to you, my brain goes all the way back to grade school when they would make you read out loud. And
Right.
so um, they would go down the line. And knowing that it's almost my turn, I know the paragraph that I'm going to
The
read.
pressure builds.
Exactly. I know every
Yeah.
single word that I am gonna stutter on, and it happened to me only one time, Rob, one time, and then I said, "It'll never happen again." And
Right.
then the day after, I kid you not, Rob, the day after, every time we had to read out loud, I would go to the restroom.
Right.
And for 12 years, Rob, I
Yeah.
spent the bulk of my school time in the restroom.
Right. Right. Right.
You know, then you were talking about the battle and fighting. For 35 years, I fought. I mean, every minute of every day, of
Yep.
every hour of every week, I fought. And, just picture it, 35 years of doing that every single day. And
Yeah.
that's when at 40, that's when I said, I'm done. Enough is,
Right.
I
I'm
mean,
not gonna fight it anymore. Right.
that's it. Whatever happens, happens. Pedro's awesome, and that's all there is to it. So, I mean,
Yeah, or the group, meetings, like, when you work for a big corporation or something like that, I would get in these big group meetings, um, and they say, "Well, we're gonna start the meeting by going around the room and everybody introduce themselves." I don't know if you've been in that situation before. And
100.
then you and then you just see the progression around the room, right? Each person does it, it gets closer and closer to you, closer, and then it's like one person away, and then you have to get up and say stuff, right? And you hadn't prepared for it, you hadn't prepped for it at all. It had to be completely off the cuff. Those were very, very stressful situations, especially in a work environment, right, where people are very judging, and your career could be at stake, as they say. um, those can be challenging situations, and I was put in many of those over the years. And to some degree, those issues come up in podcasting too. I mean, I don't know if you played around with well, you have been on Clubhouse, but there's a similar kind of terror involved in that too.
Well, okay, 2 points. I'm jotting all this down, Rob. Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, okay, first point that you were talking about with introductions. I go back to school. It happened one time. It was horrible. I said it'll never happen again. So for the first 2 days of my entire school career, all the way up to undergrad and graduate school, Rob, I missed the first 2 days of school
Yeah.
because I knew that I had to give an introduction.
Right.
And you were talking about group, um, um, job wise. I mean, I would excuse myself and go to the restroom, and
Right.
then to add to all of that, Rob, if we had to do a group project, oh, I mean, like Monty Hall, let's make a deal. I will do all of the PowerPoint and computer work. I will write everything if you can just talk.
Right. Somebody else to do the talking. Right.
Exactly. Because it's called survival.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true.
It's called survival. Okay. So, have you ever experienced a time when you were asked a question like what your name, and then you have a long block, and then the other person asks you, "Did you forget your name?" Has that ever happened to you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like, I can say Rob, but then I usually pause on the Greenlee part. So, and it's like, yeah, there can be sometimes a little bit of a gap between those things. And that's part of my strategy too, of how I speak, is that I think I've learned how to thread it together faster, but, it's the, it's, and I think it's really kind of an interesting thing the more I think about it, because it's like, I hate talking about myself, in that way, right? Because I don't know why it is, but saying my name out loud is something I've struggled with. I don't know why that's the case. Or saying what my job was, or my job title, or something like that. Um, yeah, and the Rob Greenlee thing has varied a lot for me over the years, about my ability to say that fluidly without, having a gap there. And there has been times, you're exactly right, where people have finished that for me. And it is a little embarrassing, right?
Oh,
So,
Rob, so 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 if I had a quarter for every time that happened, I would have like a fleet of Teslas. So let me just tell you.
right, right,
And 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 when that happens, how I react is, I want to educate that person because maybe they've never encountered this before. And that's when I tell the person, well, I have a speech impediment. I stutter. So I may get hung up on some words.
Hmm.
And then, 9 times out of 10, they will, "Oh, I apologize. My uncle, had a stutter, or my brother had a stutter." That way, for the next time that it happens, they are better equipped to, have that handled.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that people need to finish our sentences or finish our words. They think that they're being helpful. And sometimes it feels like it's just instinctual on their part. It's not like they're doing it to embarrass anybody, or they're doing it. I think they think that they're honestly helping. Um, yeah, but it also shows a little bit of intolerance on their part.
Right.
It's not unlike what happens when you're driving your car, right? Where you're at a stop sign and the stop light changes to green, and you don't immediately slam the gas pedal to the floorboards to go ahead, and the car behind you honks their horn at you because you didn't move quick enough. It's a little bit of impatience, is what it is what it communicates to me.
And you are 100% correct, because Pedro Pena, the two P's. Um, when I was in the military, in basic training, I could not say my name, and so my P's came out like kisses, Pedro Pena, and my drill instructor, "Sir, are you kissing me?" "No, sir, I'm not. I just can't say my name."
Only that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Names are hard. Names are hard. So, do you consider stuttering as a disability? Because we all have our different views, but do you consider it as a disability?
Whew. I don't, being one, but I believe that there are others that do, that don't stutter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
You were talking about your career path, and how over the years it lessened the pressures, speech wise. Did you think that your stutter might have deterred you from doing something that you really wanted to do career wise?
I think when I think about it more, it's more of maybe missed opportunity than anything else. Um, to maybe not accelerate my career faster. But I guess as I think about it, I can't really point to anything specific that was an example that I could think of that was a direct result of that. I think a lot of the impacts of on a stutterer are not verbalized, and I don't know how you would ever know that because people are embarrassed to share things like that. So their choice or maybe exclusion is silent. So you don't know if you're getting discriminated against because of it, because nobody's overt about it. So I can't really point to anything. I think over time, as I got better at not allowing it to be heard, I think the opportunities improved. Um, but that was a progression over many, many years.
There's a movie, wonder if you've seen it, called My Cousin Vinny.
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Okay, well, in college, I was pre-law, because I wanted to be a lawyer. I love to argue. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. And then one weekend, I went to the movies and watched My Cousin Vinny.
Mm-hmm.
And in that movie, there was a character. He was an attorney, and there was a courtroom scene, and it was beginning, and the judge, had announced that he was ready for opening arguments. And so there's this man, he's all dressed up. I mean, just looks impeccable in his suit. So he gets up, just confidently, he walks over to the jury and he starts his opening statement. And he has a severe stutter. And
Mhm.
he's stuttering on everything. And at one point, he's spitting on the jury, not on purpose, and their eyes are just wide open. And you know,
Yeah.
and I watched that, and I told myself, "That's going to be me. That's going to be me." And the 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 power of fear, Rob, is powerful. It's powerful
Yeah.
because that that Monday morning, I changed my major from pre-law to psychology because I thought I can help people in different ways. but the but that one moment in time changed the entire trajectory of my life.
Wow. Yeah. I don't I think the one thing that changed the trajectory in my life as it relates to speaking was I think when I had the confidence to walk into a radio station and propose the idea of doing a live radio show. I think that was back in 1999.
Wow, that's ooh.
So that was a good 21 years ago
Mhm.
now. So 21, 22 years ago, that I had the confidence to, and or just the brute force. Um, and in some ways, I think back on it, and I think it was kind of a brute force decision that I'm gonna face this, and I don't even know what I was thinking back then. Actually, I think I was just thinking about I was in a marketing role. I was in a marketing headspace back then. I came out of college with a marketing and communications degree and business degree, and immediately got involved in working with electronic media and billboards and television and radio and stuff like that from a marketing perspective, not so much as a talent perspective. I never thought of myself as talent on that side, the guy that would get behind the mic. But just over time, I started to do a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that. And I really credit the growth and development of the internet as really my coming out opportunity. Because what it did was in the early days, there wasn't a lot of people online. So you could play around and try things and put out audio without a lot of people, listening, even though that grew quite a bit over the 6 years that I did it. As we edited lots of things.
Ex-
Just to be totally honest about it, I
right.
did a lot of editing.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is just how little editing I do now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
The the only thing that I edit are the dogs barking or the neighbor mowing the lawn.
right, right.
Those-
But I was trying to hide from it. I was for many years, and I'll admit to it 100% now as I think back on it, because I think it's important for people to hear me say that
right.
I was trying to hide from it, and because I felt the limit in opportunity that was around it,
Yeah.
and I thought maybe I could, maybe it's a little bit of a fraud. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. Um, but it did get me to a point where I was able to not have to edit. I don't know that that's the path that everyone would go down. But that's really key. I think why you're so brave and what you're doing here is that you're not worried about editing it,
No, sir.
and that's going to be an inspiration to others that have speech amendment problems, that they can do this and they can build a following.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. Thank you, sir. Now here's a next hot topic. Okay, this is like super
Okay.
hot. It's super hot. All right. So how was dating? Because as
Oh boy.
dating is see, it's hot. Um, dating is hard for a lot of people, but for us, it's like a million times more
It's a
difficult.
nightmare is what it is.
Right. So how did
This
you handle dating with having a stutter?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I hadn't well, for one thing, for the vast majority of my life, I've been married. So the combined married time period that I've had is what 30 some years, 34 years. So
How cool.
dating hasn't really been a big issue on that. But prior to that, when I was growing up, I was talking about this earlier, that I gravitated towards communities that I had friends in relationships with that were a little more tolerant, I guess, of somebody that had a speech problem. And those weren't usually the popular kids. So ones that had other things in their lives, other challenges in their lives, I tended to align with better. So yeah, so dating was probably wasn't ideal type of situation. I probably wasn't reaching the highest quality of people, I don't think, at all times. So, I mean, it's a complicated question because I'm not sure the impacts of that. Because when you're young like that and you're a child, you're really in survival mode. You're not really in deep thought provoking choices.
Exactly.
You're just trying to make it through the day.
Right.
You're trying to build what you think is the right thing to do at the moment. You really have very little perspective on what you're doing, and that was a period of time when there wasn't the internet. Things
Oh,
were very much old school. Getting on the telephone was kind of unique.
mhm. No
So
caller ID.
right, or doing anything
Yeah.
on a microphone or something, it was completely alien to me. I really had no exposure to any of that back then. So yeah, so dating was something that wasn't really a factor. It was all a person-to-person communications. And I didn't have a lot of dating experiences growing up. So it was here and there.
Now, what do you think about all this new technology? You have Google Home, you have Alexa, and then you have the one that starts with an S, which it's just horrible for me. Do you
Siri? Oh,
Good-
Siri?
God
Yeah.
bless you. Okay, so do you think that all this new technology is helpful or hurtful for people who stutter?
Boy. I think it puts a lot of pressure. I do think that it's kind of interesting to think about. I wonder if these new smart speaker platforms are how tolerant they are for speech patterns that are not mainstream, right? Um, I haven't really played around with that with them too much. I don't know if you have.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's horrible. Okay, because one of the things that the problem with them has been is, and this is an issue for even for those that don't have a stuttering problem, is that most of the communications to them has to be so structured that it's almost unusable. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that the podcast listening on those devices has been as low as it has been, is because it's not. Though I think they're getting better, but it needs to be more natural language. And I don't know if they'll ever do a good job of supporting those that stutter. Um, it's going to be one of those algorithm things that they're going to have to wrestle with at some point. Um, but I'm not sure, if that's going to happen anytime soon.
There was a good point that one of my guests had told me, that for her, she used it as a practice because that wasn't a human being, it was a robot, it was a mechanical, it wasn't a real person, and so that gave her the confidence to just practice on that. So I thought that was
Mm.
interesting.
That's an interesting observation as a emotionless person to talk to, right? I mean,
You're so correct.
uh, I've enjoyed challenging those platforms with questions and trying to inspire them to have some sort of a reaction that would be unexpected, right? Like asking Alexa if she's ever been on a date, or asking Alexa if has she ever played the guitar before, or who's your daddy, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
But that's about as far as I've tried to get into trying to challenge them. But I do think that they're going to be very important, like I said earlier in the recording here, to how we communicate with our electronic devices. It's going to become more and more important over time, though. I think in group settings, it doesn't make sense, right? Talking to a smart agent technology in a public setting doesn't make a lot of sense to me,
Right.
like on an airplane or
Oh,
on a
yes.
bus or at the shopping mall or something like that. People always look at you funny. It's like the ear pods that people wear, especially women. Women have long hair and they wear the ear pods,
Right.
uh, and they're walking down the hallway talking, right? It's like, it's like your immediate thought is they must be crazy or something because they're just talking to themselves, right? Or you think they're talking to you, and you
Right.
like answer them.
Mhm.
It's like that's happened to me before too, because sometimes I don't know that they're on the phone call. So that's the whole thing with the smart agent technologies, is that there's going to be a lot of situations where people just can't talk to it, right? So they're
Right.
still going to have to input in other ways.
Right. Because the one thing that they don't take into account is the the time space when you're trying to ask a question, because I need time to breathe. I need time, and
Yeah.
by then I hear repeat, and that's just frustrating.
Yeah, they've moved on. I mean, yeah, they have very short tolerance windows for input, right? So if you pause at all or you are slow, they'll just cut you off and not listen, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
that's that's probably a thing that they need to adjust to, is their patience for audio input
Yes.
needs to be increased a little bit. I think that they think that people are like audio machine guns or something like that, that they can just deliver it on cue. And if you don't hit that mark right, they're moving on.
Right.
It feels a little too rushed, I guess might be a simpler way of describing it, where you're given the window of contributing what you need to say to it. And that window is very short.
Extremely short, Rob.
Right, right, right. And that just doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. So what is a challenge speech wise that you had to overcome, and how did you do it?
Oh, I don't. What was it specifically that I had to overcome? Was it some sort of? Are you thinking you're asking about some sort of word or phrase,
It could be, I
or
mean,
are you?
it could be anything. Uh, Mine was the telephone. The
Um,
telephone was my nemesis, and for decades I could not make a phone
oh,
call. And so what I did was I hopped on eBay. I bought a office telephone that looked like the ones that we had in the office, and then in my room I would just, you know I would call upon my acting days and my drama days, and would
mhm.
just make up phone calls. And so, I would go bring, and then I would
Oh,
I would pick up the phone and
right.
just talk, and then would practice making phone calls. And so I did that for half a year. I mean, daily, just practicing until it became boring. And once it
Hmm.
and once it became boring, w- 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 once I sensitized myself. I mean, nowadays I can hop on the phone and do anything.
Hmm. Yeah, I think for me it was public speaking. That was my biggest obstacle that I had to get over, and that I started doing public speaking when this was probably back in. I'm thinking separate from the radio show that I did. The public speaking was, like being a panelist up on stage in a conference or something like that, or getting up in front of a judge when I, had a traffic ticket or something. Those are the kind of public speaking things that I struggled with, and I feared them a lot. For many, many years, had a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. I think that started back when I was probably that fear of public speaking was probably in the early 2000s, because I started going to the Streaming Media West conferences, and that was in the early days of the streaming media world around audio and video. I was invited to be a moderator and a panelist at some events, and I started doing that kind of stuff, and I had never done that stuff before until then. So I would say the public speaking was my nemesis for many, many years. Yeah.
Do you think it's okay to stutter?
Oh, I think it's okay to stutter. Um, I think it is okay to stutter. I mean, I think genuinely I do realize that is a reality that many face, and I also know that it's inside of me too. So, of course, I think it's okay. I do think that it's a worthy battle to overcome. Um, I think it can really help improve your life if you can.
Mhm.
But I also am sensitive to the fact that there are different degrees of stuttering that may not be able to be overcome like maybe I've been able to do. So that's the part that I'm not sure on. Not unlike what happened to me around my ADD and my um, learning disabilities, those kind of things. I think you learn to adapt, and you learn to you create new pathways, but in some ways it never really entirely goes away. And I think that if you have a severe case of stuttering, that may be even more challenging to overcome. And it may not be able to be entirely overcome. So you have to be willing to accept the fact that it's maybe, I don't know. This is a hard question. At some point, do you just accept that there's nothing you can do, or do you just keep fighting?
For me, I believe it is okay to stutter
Hmm.
because, we each have our own journeys. I speak with a lot of young people who want to get rid of it completely and
Right.
be 100% fluid. And so how I respond, that is great for you. That's your journey. I mean, however that I can help you or,
Right.
support you, I will do that. But for Pedro, I am at a point where for me, it's okay to stutter.
Okay. Yeah. I think that my journey was maybe a little different than that. I think it wasn't okay for me to. So I think I spent many years with that thought process, that I felt that it was something that I needed to eliminate.
Well,
That's the honest truth, and that's probably how you feel too. But at some point, you have to be willing to accept that that's how you communicate, and be okay with that. That
right.
brings a calm, right?
Mhm. I mean, before I turned 40, that's all I wanted, Rob. I mean, I wanted to get rid of it. I mean, that's why I tried the voodoo. I mean, I tried
You were
anything
trying anything, right? I mean,
because
that's not to say that you don't keep trying. That's not what I'm trying to say here,
oh, right,
or
right, right.
even you're trying to say. I think, but what it What it means is that there are certain aspects of our humanity that we just have to, who we are as people, that we just
Right,
have to be willing to accept, right?
right,
And be okay with. And I
exactly.
think that's what you're saying.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So here is a profound question for you.
I love those.
What has your stutter taught you?
Well, I think it's taught me a lot about treating folks with disabilities with a level of respect and recognition that that disability doesn't minimize their ability to be anything that they want to be in their life. Um, though there are physical limitations that can manifest themselves in a disability. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is recognizing and that gets back to my own thoughts of my own journey too, of understanding that that is something that is important to be a good human being, is to accept the fact that there everyone has an opportunity in life.
What advice would you give to another person who stutters?
Hmm. I don't, that's a hard one. I think a lot of the things we've talked about on the show today are a lot of the answer to that. But it's really easy for me to just sit here and say, well, this is the path that will solve it. I don't know that that's true. So I think I think a lot of it gets back to the psychology, um, of how you start working towards rewiring how you think about things and how you process and communicate. Um, and if being calm and being thoughtful and being taking breaths and pausing and slowing down for a while. And it may be, I mean, for me, it was a matter of slowing down so I could understand how to speed up, and recognizing that just pushing through brute force wasn't the right way to go, because it was like I was forcing something that just wasn't going to happen. And outwardly wide, that presented me in a negative light. So I was I was trying to do mental gymnastics in my brain to figure out a way through it, that would be invisible. It's not that it wasn't there, but it was like solving a math or creating a jigsaw puzzle or something. You're putting the pieces together in a pathway that will get you to what you would like. I don't, yeah,
Mm.
that's how I think about it.
So you've brought up some great points during our conversation. And so if you had the opportunity to give some insight to the world,
Mhm.
on the world stage about stuttering, what message would you convey to the world?
Well, first of all, I would say don't try and finish a stutter sentence. First of all, second of all, just relax. Be compassionate, be thoughtful. Don't treat the stutterer any different than you would treat anyone else, and that'll go a long ways to helping them feel better about themselves, feel better about their future, and also don't discriminate and don't assume that just because a person stutters that they're less intelligent or less capable or less able to succeed in life. And I'd say that those are the biggest things.
Lastly, you brought up a profound point that I hadn't even, you know, I didn't address it, which
Mhm.
I should have. I should have.
Mhm.
You were talking about the role of the other person in the conversation with you. Wh-
Mhm.
what is their role? And I mean, you bring up such an important aspect because for many years, I mean, for decades, when I would have a conversation with a person and I was having a block, they would look at their phone, they would look at their watch, they would look up, look down, look everywhere. And then when I would have a severe block where my eyes are closed and I stop breathing, and
Right.
when I pushed through and opened my eyes, they were gone. And
Mm.
so I mean, it's extremely important for the other person. One of my guests was Mike Wilson. He has a fantastic YouTube, and he was talking about the importance of eye contact. Because when I have a block, when I repeat words, I don't look at the person. I look up, I look down, I close my eyes. And Mike Wilson was telling me the importance of maintaining that eye contact.
Yeah.
And 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 the role of the other person for for from my you know perspective is to maintain a level of courtesy
Mhm.
and respect.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think patience, um, yeah, just respecting that this person that's talking to you has something important to say and they're working very hard to say it. And that, yeah, I mean, I can see that happening. I can see that happening that because what happens in the other person is that they get very extremely uncomfortable. And so you're putting this other person in an emotional state that they don't know how to deal with. And their reaction is to flee. They don't want to be faced with having to deal with that. It's not something they have to deal with, is how they think.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the hardest part. And running like that sends a really negative message to the person, and it's a lack of respect and understanding
Right.
that just because a person has a stutter means that they're lesser of a person, because that's what that communicates. That's what that person is telling the stutterer, is that they're not worth me standing around to
Right.
listen
Right.
to have patience
Mm,
to listen to what they have to say.
yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part about it. And I don't know that we're ever going to be able to reach everyone to have that kind of compassion or that kind of care for another human being, but we can sure try.
Yes, we can. It's all about education. And so I want to thank you for bringing that up because I hadn't ever addressed it. And so, in all my 3 years of in this podcast, so I'm going to add that to my list of 100 and no, to all my questions.
Right,
So,
right.
I would like to say thank you, thank you, thank you, Rob Greenlee, for spending your afternoon. I mean, it was phenomenal. You are huge inspiration. I mean, you are just hashtag awesome. You are. I mean, I cannot say enough. And so I, I just wanted to say thank you for being on this podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, and if I can be of help to the greater stuttering community, or support or help or encourage or whatever I can do, share my story more, or speak with people individually or whatever that is, I would love to do it.
How cool. Now, my listeners are global. I think I'm in 45 countries. And
That's
so
great.
it's awesome. It's a blessing. So, okay, let's say they wanted to reach out to you. What would be the best way?
Well, I'm actually on Twitter, so at Rob Greenlee, and then I have a website, robgreenlee.com. I do a a regular podcast on Wednesdays and Saturdays, hour and a half each time, live video and audio at newmediashow.com. But if you wanted to reach out to me individually, I'm accessible on all of the social media platforms. So if you just do a search for Rob Greenlee on just about any social platform, you can find me there, and you can do a direct message or something like that. And then you can send me an email too, just Rob dot Greenlee, Rob dot Greenlee, Greenlee at gmail.com. And more than happy to talk with you or get involved in something that is related to this topic or any other topic, frankly, about podcasting. So I would love to see more podcasters come out of this community. I think it would be good for everyone.
How cool. Thank you, sir. We will put all those links the in the notes. And so I just want to say just thank you again for for sharing your story, because I believe there's healing in in
Yeah.
sharing. So,
Agreed. Yeah.
just thank you. I hope down the road we can do this again. Another like Joe Rogan-esque 3-hour interview. That'd be awesome.
That's right. I think we're at 2.5 now.
Sure, no, it is all good. I've had a fantastic, wonderful conversation with you. Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome day. Take care and be well.
Thank you. You too. You too. And good luck with the podcast. Once this published, I'll get it out as far as wide as I can on my network too.
How
So,
cool. Thank you, sir. You take care.
okay. All right. Take care too. Bye.
If you like this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening, and we will talk again.